Hi, everyone. Welcome to the WINCLY. I am taking over duties today. This is Raj Girl, along with Justin LaBar. Justin, how are you doing?
Cold, but happy to be talking to you.
Yeah. So the crazy weather right now in the Midwest affected Nick Hausman. His internet's down. I guess in Chicago it's minus 20 degrees right now with the wind chill. So it is freezing. His internet's down. A lot of the city has no internet. So I'm filling in for him today. We had a interview with Eli Drake scheduled for the podcast version. That will be on tomorrow's edition of the WINCLY. But so still subscribe to the Wrestling Inc. audio channel on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast from, and check that out. That'll be going tomorrow, as well as our interview with Vic Sherma, who composed the movie Fighting with My Family with Paige, the Paige biopic. So he talks about composing the movie, getting into wrestling, how he got the gig, his thoughts on wrestling now. He wasn't a fan before, so really cool stuff. So check that out. Justin, it has been an insane week. What's going on with you?
Yeah, trying to keep. You kind of need to keep score on a piece of paper of where everybody's at and their status. Yeah, I'm trying to follow everything just like you are. Actually, you just mentioned the Fighting with Your Family. I actually had an opportunity. I had the opportunity to attend. I did not a screening last night of the movie. I did not get to make it, unfortunately, here in Pittsburgh for the screening. So I missed out on that, but I was really hoping to see it because it's got, anything that's got The Rock's name on it, and Stephen Merchant, who directed it, is a very funny guy. Vince Vaughn's in it. So, I mean, it's got all the Hollywood credibility. It's not some half-assed, indie avant-garde film. I mean, seems to be pretty legit. So I'm looking forward to catching it, later this month, or later in February when it comes out to everybody.
Yeah, same here. I had gotten a couple of passes to go last night, but Tuesday nights are, we got the Wrestling podcast, and it's just impossible. But I've heard only good things. It's like near an 80% right now on Rotten Tomatoes. Like what you said, Stephen Merchant. I was a big fan of The British Office, which was him and Ricky Gervais, and so I don't see how it can be not good. So we'll see.
And especially, just to make it believable, obviously, I just saw Bohemian Rhapsody, and everybody talks about when you're talking about a biopic, having the recreation of the sets and making it all as lifelike. And obviously, WWE cooperated with this Fighting with Your Family. In the previews, you could see several times they're in WWE arenas. And so, that certainly is going to help make it as believable as possible, and really not even just believable, but just get you invested in it. It's not like they had to do a half-ass Hollywood soundstage set to recreate what WrestleMania looks like. It seems like they actually got to shoot at the locations where they've done WrestleMania. So
right. Yeah, so that is hold on one second. There's another thing here. All right. So yeah, again, we got Fighting with My Family premiered this week at Sundance. Tons of news. Last night, Hideo Itami finished up with WWE. He lost on 205 Live to Akira Tozawa. PW Insider reporting this morning that he has not yet officially been released, but he will be getting it. So whenever that process goes through, he's going to have the 90-day no compete. And it's expected that he'll be going back to Japan. Justin, your thoughts on this?
Well, Hideo Itami, obviously formerly known as Kenta, he was probably, him along with the original Sin Cara, were probably the two biggest hyped international signings that WWE's had in the last decade, that just did not pan out. Especially for Itami, it was a case of just injury, just never could really get going. And they are also the original Sin Cara and more recently Hideo Itami, probably two of the last guys who had built up credibility with their original ring names that WWE changed. Now we've seen since WWE's pretty much kind of pretty much let go of having to they've let AJ Styles come as AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura, the list goes on and on. So it seems like they've kind of accepted and realized that letting these guys keep their name that's built them up to a status of WWE wanting them, can do good things. Tom, I would suspect he absolutely goes back to Japan. And it begs the question. We hear about other guys currently in Japan, especially if you're in Japan and you are Japanese. If you grew up in that culture, it just begs the question: I mean, I know that maybe growing up you idolize WWE or you want to be at WrestleMania or the money is just so great or something. But it really begs the question: if you're leaving Japan for WWE, what's going through your thought process to do that? Because they just haven't shown much track record, even with American guys, even with bringing back Gallows and then having Carl Anderson. They just haven't shown much track record of past NXT it working out on the bigger stage, the bigger arenas, and the more convoluted creative process that is Raw and SmackDown. So, it's great to see all of his colleagues wishing him well, and I'm sure he'll go back to New Japan and he'll probably pick right back up where he left off.
Yeah, when you think about it, I mean, Hideo Itami, he has been sidelined with a lot of injuries and stuff, but just how he's been used. I mean, it was WrestleMania 31, right, when he was entered into the Andre the Giant Battle Royal at WrestleMania, his only WrestleMania appearance, if I'm not mistaken. Thrown out pretty easily. Never got any steam. He came back from injuries. He's been on 205 Live, hasn't looked in the best shape of his career. But to your point, Kushida is going to be coming in, and that just has to be somewhat of a warning signal, I would think. Just how Japanese talent have been booked. You look at Nakamura, and I remember Nakamura when he made his NXT debut against Sami Zayn, and I was like, man, this is one guy they can't mess up. I was like, he's on fire. He's got the entrance. He's got the charisma. He's just shout superstar. And, here we are. He lost to R-Truth last night, lost the U.S. title that he held for one day. Yeah, what do you think are the chances of someone like a Kushida coming in?
I mean, again, the track records. I mean, and I don't know if this is the case with Kushida, and I'll be the first to tell you, I don't really know much about him. I know that he has high status in New Japan. I know that WWE is grabbing him, but I don't have much encyclopedic knowledge of his career, so I can't speak to him specifically. But we have to recognize, and I think the talent certainly recognizes it. The ones that now want to leave, WWE is going to continue at an aggressive rate to sign talent, men and women, possibly just for the sake of signing them, just so they can't play elsewhere. Not when they sign them, not necessarily having any concrete plan of how they're going to use them or what brand they're going to send them to or what have you. Now, granted, WWE has Raw, SmackDown, which is 2 tours. They have 2 tours of NXT that's out of Florida. The A squad and the B squad, and then they have now NXT UK. So they have no shortage of tours to fill these guys, so they can justify the depth of roster because of that. But in terms of doing anything meaningful that's going to translate to TV, I mean, with AEW and again ROH now giving people contracts and everything going on, I mean, they're going to sign people just for the sake of signing. And so if you're a Kushida or anybody, again, you can see the shiny stage of the potential of being at a WrestleMania and the potential of being like an Asuka. And talking again, going back to people coming from Japan who can break out, but you also got to be smart and look past the shiny object of potentially working at a WrestleMania and look at, okay, what do I realistically think is going to be best for my career? Because if you're a pro wrestler, your body is your vehicle, and every day you're not getting any younger. So are you willing to risk a 2-year contract, a 3-year contract of 2 or 3 years of potential prime years in your career for your body to not really make any progression, or do you go elsewhere? So if you're Kushida, yeah, I mean, you got to be looking around, just wondering. And again, I don't know what his specifics of his deal are or what he may have been told, but until WWE maybe get more committed to having guys just stay at NXT. And the problem with that is, they've given some guys that are going to NXT more money than other NXT contracts, other NXT entry level contracts. But until you can say, okay, we're going to put you just in NXT, and that might be really good for momentum and booking because of how NXT's dealt with and how your character translates. But until they show that, okay, you can be an NXT lifer, but still get to work on like the big WrestleMania stage and get a WrestleMania payout, until that point, you can't business-wise say, oh, yeah, it's a good decision for me to go and be an NXT lifer. Until that happens, which it might one day, until NXT truly is getting to have the WrestleMania love. And, we've seen NXT guys show up at Rumble, so maybe we're in the step in that direction. But until then, you can't business-wise say, oh, I'm going to go to NXT and just stay there, and that'll be fine.
Yeah, I feel like for that to happen, they need to get a viable TV deal, and getting some real money coming into it. And I think once some real money starts coming into it, then they don't need to feel like guys need to go to the main roster, that you could stay in NXT, make good money, start doing, maybe the takeovers a little more often. I don't think they should do it every month, but, maybe 6 to 8 per year. But Yeah, I mean, with Fox, FS1, I'm sure could use a show like NXT. So until it becomes its own promotion, a lot of these guys that they're signing, we just see how they get pushed. If you're a smaller guy, how you get pushed on the main roster. You chances are you'll probably end up going at 205 Live, which I think is worse than NXT. And it's just not roses right now.
Well, the tricky thing is, everybody talks about like what you just said there, Raj. Excuse me. Everybody talks about NXT getting a TV deal and such, and I don't know if that's necessarily would be the best thing. Triple H has said on the calls before to us that how sometimes part of what makes NXT cool is it still has a little bit of that underground feel because it is only on the network. The worry I would have is if it goes to TV, and yes, that would in theory then make it bring more revenue into it because people don't realize NXT is not a profitable brand by itself. Right. So yeah, while TV might bring more revenue into it, if TV then now means if the Fox or whoever it is that's distributing says, we don't want to see NXT 4 weeks in a row at Full Sail. We want it to be going to bigger places. We want it to look bigger. Well, then all of a sudden that might change NXT because what works for a lot of the NXT talents that get real, what worked for, I think, the Shinsuke's and worked for other talents that had really great NXT runs is that kind of underground, same crowd. I call it the ECW effect. That same ECW arena crowd, the same people that be sitting in the same places. You got over with that crowd. It was almost, it's almost like they were part of the show. They were like a studio audience. They knew they booed when they needed to boo. They cheered when they needed to cheer. They cheered unique things about entrances. And then I think that's part of the problem of why talents leave NXT and they don't always translate well at Raw and SmackDown. It's not just, how is Vince using them or not using them, but it's also there's certain acts that then when you have to take them to bigger arenas, a wider spread demographic, especially if parents bringing kids, it doesn't always translate that. I thought Adam Rose was a perfect example. Adam Rose was great in that setting of NXT. But then when you try to take something called the Exotic Express and put it to all these different cities, and a 10-year-old's like, what's the Exotic Express supposed to mean, or what's this supposed to stand for? Didn't work. Elias was the exact opposite. Elias's gimmick of doing the guitar doesn't work with the same crowd filming 3 or 4 weeks in TV at NXT, but it does work when you move him in big arenas and he can go to each city and talk about the city and do a song. So if NXT does become TV, go to bigger TV, but if that changes how they present it and travel, that might then change this whole formula, which is, NXT always works with guys, and then they go to Raw and SmackDown and it doesn't. So I know I kind of rambled there, but I think people need to keep that in mind.
That's a fair point. And that's one of the things. If FS1 wanted it and they keep it as is, not touching it. Because the one thing I think a lot of people worry about is Vince getting his hands on it. But at the same time, we got the XFL, for all this to happen, this is going to be at the end of the year. And that's also going to be just a couple months away from the premiere of the XFL. So I'm sure Vince is not looking to put his hands on another project. So, I get your point. And we'll just have to see. But I think more eyeballs and having it becoming its own third brand will help all these talents coming in that I just, that we see how a lot of them are used. I can't see a Roderick Strong being pushed strongly on the main roster. Kyle O'Reilly. And we'll see. But so far the track record hasn't been good. I mean, Sanity had a very cool gimmick and they're MIA. Yeah. So, also, we had like a 30-minute discussion on the Wrestling Podcast last night about Dean Ambrose giving his notice to WWE. It's the first time in recent memory that I can recall that since a statement that WWE gave to Glad about CM Punk, that they've said that a talent is leaving that's currently appearing on TV. Dave Meltzer noted last night on Wrestling Observer Radio that some of the talent, he doesn't believe it's a work. I was saying last night too that I don't think this is a work, but there are some people backstage that think that this is a work because WWE announced it, which they normally don't do. I mean, there have been many times I've reached out to WWE and asked, if is it true, like so-and-so is leaving, or so-and-so his contract is up, is coming up, and they always either don't reply or they'll say, we don't discuss that kind of information or contractual information. And this time they did. But at the same time, this is probably the biggest departure from WWE of someone on their own accord since CM Punk 5 years ago. And so maybe they're just trying to get ahead of the story, or just trying to shut it down and kind of, you know, kill all the speculation. Justin, what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, it's natural to speculate it being a work for all the things you said, you know, because this is not normally how they handle this. It's also natural to suspect that it's a work because it's pro wrestling. So this could even have started out as legitimate, and, you know, April's a long way away in some regard. So things could turn into a work by then. Maybe they, you know, I don't know. Maybe they somehow can change Ambrose's mind. The unique thing that fans have to remember, and, you know, you obviously know this really well because you own a wrestling website. I know this well because I've, you know, worked in, you know, with this for X amount of years. If for this to be a work, then that would mean, you know, I think PW Torch was the original one who broke the story about Ambrose. So for this to be a work, either it got purposely fed to the Torch,
and and Wade Keller, who runs the Torch, would never be part of an angle. He would not willingly post something that he didn't believe to be.
No, he wouldn't, but he wouldn't necessarily know that he's being worked. Like, so if they, you know, if whoever his source is that got him this, if they did it with the manipulation of, okay, we're going to get this out on the dirt sheets, and then that's how we're going to have this angle start. So, I mean, that's what fans have to remember. I understand when fans are saying, "Oh, this is a work, this is a work." I get their why they would think that, but they have to understand that the reason this whole thing started, it was because a wrestling website, you know, found out about it, but, you know, doing their digging through their own underground sources. So for this to be a work, WWE had to have somehow got that out there for that to have happened. So, you know, I don't know. I don't think it is. Again, it would if it was, it would certainly be the most interesting thing that Dean Ambrose is. I mean, we were all buzzing about it when he turns on Seth the night of Roman's departure. Then after that, things have just been kind of flat. So if this was in fact a work, and they can execute this really well with some kind of big, you know, if next Monday we see him in Gorilla pushing around Triple H and Vince, and if they kind of bottle the CM Punk, you know, kind of aspect that we saw years ago, then yeah, this is the most interesting thing they've done with Dean Ambrose since the original Shield. But I just don't think it is, for the fact of, like you said, Wade Keller, you know, he's been doing this very long. He's very well respected. So they would have had to made a point and taken a risk, quite frankly, to try to have worked him and then subsequently worked everybody else in the wrestling reporting business.
Yeah, I agree. And if I were WWE and if this was a work, I would not have him appear in a backstage segment on Raw next week. I'd keep him off TV for a while to really build that speculation. If you're going that reality angle, because, you know, one of the things, I know some people get sick when we talk about CM Punk, you know, but because he's been long gone now. But you know, when he dropped that pipe bomb promo and won the title and left, that caused so many people to get interested in wrestling again that have been out of wrestling. You know, people that were fans before starting to, you know, ask and be interested in this angle. And then it was within like a week or two, Punk returned, and then it was just kind of back to same old. And it seemed like there was a lost opportunity there. So if they're ever going to do something like really reality based, I hope they learn from that lesson and you know, really keep it going and do something interesting.
Well, you know, I'm curious what you think here. I tweeted this yesterday. If this is legitimate, which again I tend to lean that it is, recognizing that we could all be wrong, but I tend to lean that it is legitimate. What's the best course of action for WWE? Because if I'm WWE, I would think the best thing they could do at this point, if they truly accepted this guy doesn't want to be here, we've offered him more money, long-term security, he just does not want to be here, screw it. The best thing I would think to do is just to keep him off TV, keep him off the road, with the attempt of trying to just make people forget about him, let him be irrelevant, try to have his stock not get any higher, maybe even try to lower it again with irrelevancy. Because if they try to keep him around, and now that the story is out there and fans are going to pick up on this, all they're potentially doing, unless they bring him to TV every week and have him get squashed, otherwise you risk kind of him building his own kind of like little underground momentum, and you risk his stock going up, then making him more valuable for when he is eligible to go elsewhere, whether it's AEW or whatever. So it's like, unless you either need to keep him off the road, kind of like what they did with Neville at a point, even you know, even though it was kind of like just out of sight, out of mind, or if they want to be I guess dicks about it, they can just have him get squashed every week.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like Neville, his stock almost went up by him being off of TV, right? Like it caused more people to be buzzing about what he's going to do next or where he's going to go. And by not squashing him, his star power kind of almost it never went down, went up. I get your point too. I mean, I think there's arguments both ways, but I think they're starting this thing with Nia. I think that's leading to Dean losing to Nia. I mean, they had Nia get involved in the Rumble, throwing Mustafa Ali out. I think, did she throw anyone else out? I knew she threw Ali out.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, it was definitely Ali.
Yeah, and starting to get physical with the men, the first time that they've done that in like a decade. So I just see them going with Dean getting squashed in this feud with Nia, and then probably not being at WrestleMania, or if he is, maybe in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, thrown out first, really marginalizing him before getting rid of him. And WWE, they know how to marginalize people.
But if you do, now that WWE is they put a story on their website, and that's what really makes it look like it work. They put a story on the website. So the fact that they're basically saying to their audience, because they want their audience to come to the website, the fact they're saying, look, we're getting rid of this guy, or we're getting rid of this guy. If they were to do these things that you just said, isn't it just going to build this massive amount of booze every time it happens, every match that and isn't that going to build this kind of this rally kind of feeling behind him that I can't wait to see where he goes and he can stick it to them. That's what I'm saying. Just keep him out of sight, out of mind.
Well, it depends too, because they announced this, but they announced it to the internet audience, right? I don't think they're ever going to announce it on TV.
Oh no, sure. I mean, if they do, that is the clear sign,
right? Then it's a work. But by doing it just on the internet, is there enough people? I mean, you'll have some. You'll have the vocal minority, but is that enough to start this underground upswell for Dean? It could be, and they could always change course if they start to see that. But I just think Dean is too much of a star that I think they'd probably want to take some of that stock out. I mean, look what they could marginalize people quick. Look at Kurt Angle. Remember Matt Hardy? I mean, there's so many guys that Zack Ryder, when he got hot, I mean, fans did not want to start booing him, and WWE quickly brought him down, to where he is today.
I'll say this: if they do try to marginalize it, if they do try to basically embarrass him, his character at least, and have him lose to Nia and be first eliminated, I'll be curious. I mean, it's a personal thing to us, I'll be curious how Renee Young has to handle that on commentary. I mean, it's already been kind of like, we already have Corey Graves grilling her for every explanation of what Dean Ambrose is doing. So I'll be, now.
Well, if it's on pay-per-view, maybe she won't be on commentary for that match.
Maybe not.
We'll see. But yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, it's funny. I'll talk with guys a lot about, could you imagine if the internet was this big and this widely used when the Monday Night Wars were happening? And I mean, we're not even close to that. But this whole thing with AEW, it is the first time where you're starting to see WWE in real bidding wars for talent, like where a talent really has an option and is choosing the other company. We haven't really seen that before. Usually it's people that don't want to be with WWE or want to leave, then go. And that's usually how the big talent jumps happen, but it's not someone willingly choosing something over WWE. So it is really interesting with AEW, which is not a thing yet, until they have a show, until, it's not a thing yet.
Yeah. I mean, AEW, they got power to them. It's what all of us fans dream about if we won the lottery, but they have what we would call a money mark in Tony Khan, who's ready to make sure it's financially stable and give it a go. And they're signing these talents to 3-year deals. And, I had Britt Baker on my Wrestling Reality podcast that comes out every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. I had her on. I interviewed her and I played it last week. And she, talked to him. I mean, they're taking care of her. I mean, and they're giving serious security and serious, option of, okay, do you want to go here to a WWE or NXT where they're going to pay you X, or here's the kind of security, here's the kind of travel schedule, here's the kind of merchandise deal. I mean, it's the first legitimate, like over the last 15 years, TNA's had times where they've been able to compete financially and take somebody over, have somebody choose them over WWE, but maybe it's just a person in the mid card, maybe it's a mid card Christian from WWE. Let's take him. We'll make you a main event and call you Christian Cage. Or, obviously Kurt Angle was a huge coup for them because he had kind of fallen out of favor with his personal problems at the time at WWE. TNA had times where they were able to compete one off with getting a name to come over. But TNA, Ring of Honor, nobody in the last 15, 20 years, nobody since WCW has been able, from top main event down, been able to compete with financially. And AEW appears to finally be able to bring that back. Obviously, getting Chris Jericho to a 3-year deal that is the best deal that Jericho's ever talked about. It's several millions, as well as I'm hearing it's pretty good on his merch end as well. So I mean, all the way from a main eventer like a Chris Jericho all the way down to a younger, a couple years in the business, Britt Baker, female wrestler, being able to give her a deal that's just she couldn't turn, so like. This is a big deal for that reason. Yes, we don't know what the TV distribution is yet. That's a big deal, as you and I agree on. And yeah, they've only had one show and All In, so it is still very, very early. But just based upon the facts that we know now, this is the most legitimate threat since WCW.
Absolutely, and not just that. With Tony Khan, he's a billionaire that's putting his money into this, but it's not like it's just like, hey, let's try wrestling. He's someone that's been a fan forever, who understands, who has the business acumen to understand what has worked, what hasn't worked, has seen the product go up and down, and has studied that. So it's I don't see him like Ted Turner was a wrestling fan, but it's not like he was watching it weekly and sending in results, Well,
and it's also not like Ted Turner back in the day was the one approving which wrestler got money. That he was so hands off on that, which maybe was a bad thing ultimately. The fact that Tony Khan is invested, he'll know. Okay, he'll have some vision to see. Okay, this person's right now is perceiving the wrestling business as a mid carder, so it's only give him. The fact that he'll probably be giving input and will be the final say on, who Cody and the Bucks do decide to sign and bring in. That'll probably be a smart thing. Now, I mean, that can be dangerous. Again, the term money mark out there, wrestlers are savvy people. They will get every dime out of you possible. So, I mean, obviously, but I think Tony Khan and his family, they're so accomplished business-wise to this point that Tony will be hopefully aware enough to realize when he's being taken for a ride or when he's being, so he'll hopefully be able to make good decisions on, yeah, guys, we're not going to sign that guy for that much money. I'll cap it here, but we're not going to this point. Hopefully he'll be able to make those decisions and not get too passionate into being such a fan of somebody and overpaying them.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So exciting times with that. That being said, 6 months from now, Dean Ambrose, where do you see him?
AEW. This is all just speculation. You figure, I don't see him as a guy that's going to want to go to Japan. You figure, especially if his wife's going to continue to work with WWE. I believe they live in Nevada, so keep himself domestic. Keep himself here in the States. AEW, from all accounts, is going to have a lighter travel schedule. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. They appear to have the best financial backing other than WWE. So if Ambrose did just turn down what we're hearing is a significant 5-year deal at WWE, he's going to obviously want to go somewhere that at least, maybe not match it exactly, but at least obviously still not take a drastic hit financially from what he's been making in WWE. AEW, again, it's the new fresh thing. So, I'm sure they would be happy to have him there as John Moxley or whatever, assuming that he goes back to that name. AEW just makes the most sense. That seems to make the most sense. And quite frankly, if his contract's done in April, well, I guess if his contract, I don't know. Tell me this: if his contract's up in April, whatever day it is in April, does he still have to honor a no compete, or as soon as it's up, can he appear somewhere the next day?
No, he can appear somewhere the next day. No compete.
So in theory, he could show up at Double or Nothing then.
Right. Yeah, I know. A non-compete is when they put those in when they grant talent their release, so they'll still get paid. They'll get their downside, but in order to get that, you got to honor this no compete where you can't go anywhere for 90 days. So that's why, like Cody and the Bucks, the day their contract was up, they announced AEW. Kenny Omega's contract is going to be up here in a couple days, and it seems the word is that he's going to be appearing at the AEW ticket, the Double or Nothing ticket event in Las Vegas on February 7th. So once your contract expires, you're free to go where you want. Now, Hideo Itami, since he got his release, a lot of times they could put conditions on that release if they release you early. Now, the interesting thing with Itami is that they granted him his release when they haven't been doing that with anyone else. To me, that would suggest that they made a deal where he can go back to Japan, but he can't go to AEW. It's similar to Brock Lesnar when they granted him his release. He couldn't go to TNA, but he could go to Japan. Yeah. His release, actually, he couldn't go to the UFC either. It was either football. Actually, it wasn't any wrestling. It was just football. So I'm wondering if they probably did the same thing there. Your thoughts, and I might bounce off here for a second. My screen just kind of went frozen. So go ahead and start talking, and I'll be right back.
What do you want to talk about? All right. Well, again,
Tommy, where do you see Tommy in 6 months?
I think Hideo Itami, again, he goes back to Japan. I think again, he that's where he made his fame, was in New Japan. So it would make the most sense for him to pick right back up and go there. And again, if WWE probably is going to allow him to go there first before going anywhere else in the U.S. market. Who knows? Maybe I don't know anything about Hideo Itami personally. Maybe maybe personally Hideo Itami, maybe also part of his, maybe sometimes it's a culture shock. Sometimes it's different from guys who've lived in Japan their whole life to come live in the U.S. and have to live in Orlando, Florida. So maybe I don't know how he reacted to that. So I think just all things would point to him going back to New Japan over Ring of Honor, AEW, Impact, anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I see him in Japan, maybe possibly Noah or New Japan. So we'll see. Another bit of news: Chuckie T and Trent Baretta are leaving New Japan. This is another one where it seems very likely that they're probably headed to AEW. Any thoughts on that?
No. Again, it's one of those things where, look at the landscape now, that just the options these guys have. I don't AEW. I mean, that obviously, again, but the only thing is, for guys like them right now, is leaving New Japan is, if you do pick AEW, you got a little bit of wait. You got to wait a little bit, or you got to go work some indies in the process. Whereas at least if you went to an ROH or an Impact right now, you kind of pick right back up and start getting that guaranteed paycheck of whatever they're going to pay you. So, I don't know where. I don't have as good of a feel of where they would go, but not WWE, but it certainly seems like no shortage of options right now.
Yeah. And we did our SmackDown review on last night's podcast. Definitely downloaded that and check it out. But real quick, your thoughts on last night's SmackDown?
It was okay. The Dan O'Brien stuff, very, very good. I like the new
belt.
I like the new belt. I like the new coat of paint they got on Eric Rowan. I love the recycle symbol being in his name on the Tron. I mean, that the Dan O'Brien stuff continues to be great. The fact that they're going to have the Elimination Chamber match with him in it, I mean, that is intriguing, because because I don't think there's any for sure answer there. I mean, I think you would think that Bryan's going to hold this. He's doing so well as a title. You think that he goes to Mania, but I don't think it's a guarantee. So I think there's some nice suspense there. Still to be determined, who does he work at Mania? I'm still, Nick and I talk about this every week. I'm still thrown off that it's not going to be The Miz. I mean, after all the hype that they did and built with these two guys when Daniel Bryan was medically disqualified, and then now you have both of them healthy in the company, both thriving. That's just baffling to me. I don't know what they're doing with Shane and Miz. I'm lost there. I don't know why Rusev's all of a sudden a heel again. So I'm a little bit of a head scratcher with some things on SmackDown. I mean, I was entertained. It's 2 hours, as we say, it was sweet spot of length, but I am confused.
R-Truth beating Nakamura.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm not surprised about R-Truth getting a push. That doesn't surprise me. Again, he's had such longevity, and he comes around. He always gets a push, and he's a good soldier. what I'm surprised about actually is when Nakamura beat Rusev at the Rumble, my immediate thought was, well, maybe this is a resulting effect of, well, we don't want to lose Nakamura either. I don't know if his contract's up this year or not, but that's kind of my thought there. But then when he drops the title to R-Truth 2 days later, then it kind of debunks that thought that I had Sunday. Well, I don't know what they're trying to do here. With Nakamura.
And Nakamura, he did tweet out last night WCW, whatever that. So that's gotten some people talking because Bret Hart famously, after the Montreal Screwjob, after the cameras went off the air, was signing WCW in the air, and some people think it's a play on that.
Or he just wants to talk about his woman crush and he doesn't want to wait till Wednesday.
Yeah, that could be. Or maybe it was early in the morning on Wednesday. It could have been after midnight. But usually when you do that, then you reveal who your woman crush was.
Maybe it's Lana.
Right. Yeah, so I'm in the same boat with you. I found it entertaining. The tag match kind of bored me just because I've seen those guys so many times outside of Heavy Machinery. But I thought the rest of the show was pretty good. I do think the Daniel Bryan stuff, how over the top they're going with it, it's entertaining. Daniel Bryan's great at it. It's fun to watch, but it doesn't feel like a top level program. It doesn't feel like a WrestleMania main event type of deal. It feels very upper mid card, like what you'd have for someone who you're trying to get to that level, to the main event level. So you kind of give them this gimmick for a while, and then eventually you take it away to get them to that next level.
I disagree. I mean, it's very easy to dislike somebody who's preachy, no matter what they are, no matter what they preach about. If somebody's preachy, and he just does it so well, and it works so well because we all know that this is some extension of himself. That he truly is a guy who cares about the environment and does do things on a environment and health conscious way. So the fact that he's taking it to this level and it's being so preachy and bad guy wrestling, I think it's great. And but to your point, it's okay because he's not gonna. I mean, he's not main eventing WrestleMania. I mean, look, between Daniel Bryan, if he's the WWE champion come WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins, and then Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey, or maybe triple threat is on there. Out of those three, Daniel Bryan's not main eventing WrestleMania. So.
Right.
So in that argument, it's fine for this, I think, right now.
I think if the booking was a little bit different, he probably could be. Like, if Bryan was protected more over the last year and was babyface and, they kept him hot, and then him winning the Rumble and challenging Brock, to me, that seems like a more interesting match than Brock versus Rollins right now. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with how they booked Rollins over the past 6 months. But
I would agree. If we did not see Bryan versus Brock at Survivor Series,
right,
and Bryan had stayed face and won the Rumble and then go on to challenge Brock for Mania, absolutely, I do think that is a match that could headline WrestleMania. But I think since the cards fell the way they did, and I actually am enjoying this heel Daniel Bryan more than I was the most recent babyface Daniel Bryan, just because. Yeah, I think main event babyface Daniel Bryan, you really only get one round with, and that round is expired since he's surpassed being an underdog and now he is a top guy. So I think having him just do this heel stuff is probably maybe the best use of him. I think he could be higher up on the WrestleMania card depending on who his opponent was. That's going to kind of be the big thing. It's like, is his opponent, somebody really established like a John Cena or somebody really established, or is his opponent, somebody they're going to give a big break to like a Mustafa Ali? That's going to dictate how important his Mania match is.
Yeah. All right. Well, great, Justin. Again, Nick out today because of the weather in Chicago. His internet's down, but he will be back tomorrow. Our interview with Eli Drake will be on tomorrow's episode of the WINCLY. Justin, before we take off, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, again, if you enjoy wrestling talk, I got more coming from me. My weekly podcast, Wrestling Reality, presented by Ticket King. It's out every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. Anywhere audio is available. So I encourage you to download it, subscribe, tell a friend, and I'll be back here tomorrow on Wrestling Inc.
Yeah. And so, make sure to check us out tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. This is 5 days in a row for me in a row. So hopefully everything works out and Nick is back tomorrow, so I can get a
when you own a site, you're not supposed to be working this hard. You're supposed to be you're supposed to be lounging around in Mexico, making everybody else work for you, right?
I mean, my hammock misses me. But hopefully,
well, 5 days of podcasting, your wife probably misses you too.
Yeah, actually, tonight is a date night because it's been a while since I've hung out with the wife and kids. So
I dare, and I met your wife. Your wife was a very lovely, nice person. I dare you to walk up to your wife today and say, "Sorry, honey, I got to watch NXT live tonight."
Yeah, I got to cover that. There are NXT TV tapings tonight. So yeah, yeah, that would not go over well.
Tell me how that works out.
Yeah, that would not go over well. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and join us tomorrow for the WINCLY.